So hello and welcome to J Designs. So in this video, we're just gonna do a general walk around of this little camper here. This thing just got back from almost a 3-week long trip of just straight up living on the road. It was absolutely amazing, and this little tiny camper was, in my opinion, an absolute success. So let's look through this thing. Also, I want to talk about the things that went really well on this build and some of the things that didn't go so well that need to change in the future. And that'll be a little bit later in the video, so make sure and stay tuned for that. I also want to start this video off by saying this camper right here is just a prototype. So it was essentially just built for the one trip that it went on. It did work very well, but future variants will be much better. So really quickly, you can see the space between like the edge of the cab and the truck there. So imagine like a triangular toolbox there. We do another one on the other side, and then also a pop top on top that would give you an extra 2 to 3 feet of room on the inside. I'll share a CAD model with you so you get the general ideal of what that looks like, but just kind of envision that in the future of this. We're gonna put the build of this camper on this channel very soon, and when I build the second camper that will be like this one with the pop top and the toolbox on the side, you'll see that as well. So getting inside the camper was super easy. I did make this T-step thing, which was really nice. It just kind of moves that step a little further down, and then I can also step right on top of the hitch. Actually, the whole bumper is an entire step, which is super nice. But open this guy up. This is a manufactured door. I did not make this myself. You can see there's a screen here, so this is really nice for at night. When I was out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure nobody's gonna come looking through my window in the middle of the night, that screen is great for airflow. And then we'll show you inside the camper in a second, but I really wanted to show the camper loaded full of gear. This is not gonna be like where everything's super nice and prettied up. This is how the camper actually traveled on that 2-week trip, and I really wanna show you that. So let me get these boxes out of the way, and then we can really see the inside of the camper. So this green tote here is all just clothes. You'd be actually surprised how much clothes you need for 3 weeks or something like that of travel. That would come out and just live inside the truck. I'd put them in the camper just for more space inside of the truck. And then we also have this little basic storage tote here that's just got your basic stuff: pots, pans, cleaning supplies, cling wrap, stuff to do dishes, stuff you need to live. So there you go. There is the basic build out of the camper. We got a nice window here. Let me open that up for you. Super easy. There are 4 latches, but I just leave this one latch, so it's super easy to open it and get some nice airflow through here. And you can see it's pretty well lit all by itself. I did not wire any lighting into this thing. There is a power system, which we'll talk about in a second, but there's no lighting because this is just a prototype. And to be honest with you, it's super easy just to pull your phone out, turn the flashlight on, shine it at the roof, and that would light this entire space. So really, I guess the centerpiece of the camper is that fridge. That is the fridge I happen to have. It is an absolutely massive fridge. I'm actually trying to sell this fridge, and I want to get a smaller fridge. I'll probably end up getting a drawer fridge, so it'll actually be really low. It'll sit below this sleeping platform. If you have any experience with drawer fridges, let me know how you like them. And then underneath the bed here, so this is just a basic camping mat. I would use normal bedding on it, which is not in here right now. But this is a heated blanket. This was absolutely amazing. So I slept, I think, down to 40-degree weather. That made that super comfortable. I usually get too hot running this heated blanket on the lowest setting. So to run the fridge and to run this heated blanket, you can't see it, but there are 4 Renogy 100 amp hour lithium batteries. And then we've also got behind the fridge is a charge controller from Renogy as well. And then you can see the inverter just above the fridge there, and there's the display, which shows me all the information on charging and whatnot. So the bed is actually super easy to get into. That was very important for me. Sometimes you're traveling, you're hammering out 8 hours on the road one day, and you want to hop into the camper really quickly and go to bed, get some Z's, to wake up and hammer out some more miles the next day. So show you that real quick. And I'll bring the camera in a little closer, and you can see, how much space I have in the bed. So there is the sleeping situation. You can definitely see it's a little tight. You don't have a ton of headroom, but that was kind of what I was going for. I wanted to keep the camper very small, which would hopefully help the fuel economy of the truck. Campers can be a big aerodynamic hindrance, and that reduces the range of the truck. Honestly, what I plan to do with with this truck and camper in the future is to go full-time on the road, and one of the biggest expenses of full-time travel is just straight up fuel, especially when you're driving a big truck on 35-inch tires. So seeing the inside of this thing, I think most people will say, hey, that camper is way too small, that would not work for me. But I would argue, at least for my style of travel, mostly what you're doing is you're driving the majority of the time. So I saw new destinations every single day. When I wasn't driving, I was either out hiking or spending time with family and friends, taking to museums, stuff like that. Like, you spend very little time actually in the camper. And, you know, really the only thing the camper is for is a fridge, it's a power system, and it's a place for me to go to bed at night. And the camper totally does that. So I don't really think I need something super huge. Let me know, would a camper this small work for you? So now we got how I'd sleep out of the way. We'll just look at some of the other things in the inside here. So this was all dry food storage, so stuff that didn't have to be cold. Cold stuff obviously went in the fridge. And then actually behind this camper was pretty much built, and then as soon as it was done being built, the camper got packed, and then it literally went on the trip like the next day. So I had to bring a ton of tools with me. This was actually a lot of weight. The camper was heavier than I thought. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but definitely can save some weight here. And obviously use these very simple bins that fit right up under here for something else. And you can see right there, there's the batteries. But these bins fit under here really, really nicely. I think the rug is a very nice touch, so I like to have a very light colored interior in my campers. One, when bugs or mosquitoes get in here, it's really easy to see them with a light color. The other thing about a light colored interior is that it just reflects more light. Like that dark plywood floor would definitely absorb a lot more light. Another thing that was super handy, sounds really funny, but is this little vacuum. It's cordless, and you just kind of plug it into its charger. Super handy to have this. It's way nicer than a vacuum. It's super cheap, and I actually use that at home a lot too. Did not need the fan, but I'm glad I bought it. I'm glad I brought it. As I went to warmer climates, it was definitely necessary to have some airflow in here, you know, more than would come through the window and the door if I had it open. I do want to note too, you can see in this back corner, and I have video of it, there was actually plans to put an AC in this thing. And that looks so freaking cool. So the one thing I don't like about the AC, you can see here, like that little corner of it sticks out behind the cab of the truck. It's a big dumb off-road truck. It already gets bad fuel economy. We don't want to be hurting the aerodynamics of this thing anymore. And it's already bad, you know, let's not make it worse. Open the door. AC's all the way in the back. I'm loving it, man. Sleeping platform's gonna be here. Gonna have the fridge over here, and battery system all the way in the back, water all the way in the back. Got to keep that weight distribution forward. So it would have went right here, and the electrical system in there is way robust enough to actually run that AC. I really wish I had done that, but I just didn't have time. There was a certain deadline the camper needed to be done, and then it was, like I said, immediately going on the trip. So I elected to not put the AC in because I was mostly in colder climates up north. I want to note too, the window does have a privacy screen here that helps to keep the sun out too in the middle of the day when the sun's beating down through the window, keeps the temperatures down. And it also has a mosquito net as well. Both of those came in super handy. This allowed me to leave the window open all night, which was actually very important. We'll talk about that later. So now that we've got the interior of the camper covered, I'd like to share a little bit of a story with you. So like I said, I was in a rush to get this camper done because I had to hurry up and go to a wedding. And then after that wedding, the trip would start. But I was driving for about 12 hours. I had never slept in this camper before. And my first night in it, I might have almost died. Not joking. So as you can see on the inside of this camper, it's not a huge space. And then not a huge space is filled up with a lot of stuff. So it's a very small volume in there. I was sleeping in here and it was about 40 degrees, so I had the door shut and I had the window shut in the camper, everything sealed up. And I slept for about 8 hours, I think, and then when I woke up, I had this really, really fast breath. Like it was like, It was super weird. I've never had that happen to me before, and I was trying to go through it in my head. I'm like, man, am I claustrophobic? And I've never had problems with being claustrophobic before in my life. So I was like, man, that's probably not it. And I was thinking, well, this is a really small space, and I'm in here breathing, producing carbon monoxide. And that's what it was. I opened the window, and then after about 5 minutes, my breathing slowed back down. And yeah, that's a super dangerous scenario. So if you get, too much carbon monoxide, you will pass out. And then I was sleeping in a Chick-fil-A parking lot. A bunch of the Chick-fil-A, employees showed up, and none of them bothered me whatsoever. I woke up on my own, thankfully, but you can pass out if you get too much carbon monoxide. So that was interesting. I learned I had to sleep with the window open every night, which is kind of ironic because I put a lot of time sealing the camper, making it weatherproof. So there's no air sneaking in, whether it be hot or cold outside. Obviously, you want to maintain the temperature of the camper. And I also thought about insulating it. And I guess it's a good thing I didn't do any of that, because I ended up having to leave the window open all night, every night, because there's just to prevent that carbon monoxide buildup. But yeah, if you're building small campers, be cautious about that. I think in the future, I'll have a small fan right here that'll suck air out of the camper, and then it's just going to breathe air in from like around the door, stuff like that. So we're constantly moving air, and that way I don't have to leave that window open. So now that we covered the majority of this camper back here, I want to talk about the other things that we got loaded in the truck, because all of these things are important for this whole system working as a long-term travel vehicle system. So here's the water right here. I wanted the water in the camper initially, but it's pretty good right here. So I really want to control the weight distribution of the truck. So you'll notice the batteries and the fridge are all right here. We want to keep that weight in between the axles. You don't want weight outside of your axles or too far this way. Anyways, so I like having the water here. It works. And I do have a pump in here. We'll get to what's in here in a second, but pretty much the way I did it is you just pull the hose out, and it's just used as like a siphon. So you just gotta initially suck the water over that height. Usually I don't get it in my mouth, and as soon as you get the water below the water tank, it actually just starts flowing, and it will stop flowing if you go above the tank. So that's how I did my water the entire trip. And actually the entire trip I did on that 5-gallon Jerry. Worked really well, did dishes a couple times. Did not shower off of this. A lot of the showering I did, so I have a gym membership at Anytime Fitness, which is a 24-hour gym, and they're all over the US, so that worked really well. About 2/3 of the times I spent my nights in Anytime Fitness parking lot that let me had showers. They're open 24 hours, like I said, and they also have Wi-Fi there if I need to do any big uploads or anything like that. So continuing on, these two are tools. We're really trying to keep the weight down low. Don't need to get to them super fast. If something's breaking, we're probably not going anywhere quick. Most of this, actually all of this, I did not use the entire trip. So this is a shower system, propane bottles. There's a stove down here too. There's the water pump. Yeah, did not use any of that stuff. In the future, I'm gonna go away from propane. I have a robust enough electrical system, so I'm gonna go to induction. So we'll go around to the other side. On the other side of the truck here, obviously we got to keep the driver compartment completely free for myself. Obviously right here there's a winch, so I have what's called a remote mount winch. We'll do a separate video at some point on why I have a remote mount winch versus just having a winch hard mounted to the front of the truck. Here's a rope that I don't care about. There is a recovery gear behind here, but you can't see it. It's always good to have a rope you don't care about, in my opinion, because if you ever do a flat tow, and if the person that you're flat towing doesn't really know how to keep the rope tight, this is going to drag on the ground and get damaged quite a lot. RC car toolbox, that's absolutely imperative to have RC cars. And this is actually a toilet here. Never use this thing, but I kind of like having it. That way, if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you got to do a number 2, you have that. And the rest of that's just hat and shoes are all over the place. Alrighty, so that's the camper. Let me know what you think of it. Like I said, there will be iterations of this camper in the future. So with that, let's talk about what didn't work on this camper, and maybe we'll get to what worked after that. So this is a small bed. I showed you it. It works totally fine. But in the future, I said I'd like to go to a drawer fridge that sits much lower, and that would actually allow me to put 2 of these beds side by side either for 2 people to sleep in here or for me to just have more space to myself. As well, you'd absolutely want to have an air conditioner in here for warmer climates. And I'm pretty confident I can get that to all work below a sleeping platform. It's about here. Another thing I really don't like is this camper is entirely skinned in wood. I don't like building out of wood, but the reason why wood was used in this camper is because, well, this is a prototype. Wood is easy to work with and wood is cheap. In the future, we're gonna go to they make insulated panels and they're skinned with what's called FRP, and that stuff is totally, you don't need to paint it. If it gets scuffed, you're not chipping down to the wood. And then obviously if this paint is rubbed off of the wood, you're gonna get water in there. And wet wood is not a good thing. The other thing too, with this being such a small space, is that you're just breath in here. You'd see like the condensation appearing on the aluminum frame in here, and the wood is porous. So the wood's gonna absorb that stuff over time. So in future campers, I'm definitely looking forward to not using wood, and you can use these like foam walls that are structural. It's really cool. So that's that. Also, it works fine in here. I can actually change my clothes right here, but it'd be really nice to have a pop-up roof. And then toolboxes on the side just means I can get more stuff out of the interior of the truck and load it onto the toolboxes that will be on the side. We would lose the window if we had toolboxes here, but then you'd have a pop top that would have windows on it. So you'd be totally fine from an airflow standpoint. Another thing I didn't like, one from an aesthetic standpoint, is these straps. So they just go through the square tube on the camper, and then they go off to different points on the bumper here, and there's some strap down points over there. In the future, I definitely need to go to something that like positively affixes the camper to the bed. So I'll probably do like a piece of angle right here with a piece of rubber in between it and then bolt through it. The rubber just isolates the bed from the camper a little bit. When you're mobbing up rocky roads and stuff like that, going up a hill like this, is the camper gonna fall to the back? There's a couple times where it would like shift around because I could see the gap between the camper and the headache rack there. It would kind of open up and then you go back down hills and the gap would kind of close up again. There was also a time where I was hopping in my truck at my buddy's house and I was like, all right, man, I'm gonna get out of here. Shook his hand, whatnot. And I was like, all right, man, I'm gonna get out of here unless you wanna go cut donuts in your backyard. I was totally joking with him, but he's like, he's like, yeah, man, let's go do it. So we went and did donuts in his backyard. And while we were doing the donuts in his backyard, he cut a couple donuts because it's his yard. I'm gonna let him do it first. The camper like slid back away from the headache rack in the flatbed. And I was like, oh man, it kind of moved a little bit. Anyways, a little bit sketchy. The camper never fell out the entire time, but that is something I need to work on. Let me know if you have any ideas of what I can do to kind of keep that camper located in the bed, or if there's some off-the-shelf options so I don't have to fabricate anything, that'd be awesome too. Thanks in advance. So another thing that didn't really work too well, in my opinion, is it didn't actually get that good fuel economy. Like that was the whole goal of keeping the camper this small and keeping the whole camper underneath the cab. I was recording the fuel economy. It averaged about 16 mpg, and the truck usually averages about 20 mpg cruising on the highway. So I was really surprised to see a 4 mpg hit. I know people do kind of like, oh, why do you care so much about the fuel economy? Well, one, range of the truck. Two, when you're trying to do full-time travel, hands down the biggest expense is fuel. So if I want to do full-time travel, if I can keep the fuel consumption really, really low, that means I can just continue on traveling for longer and working less. So what's going on with the whole aerodynamic issue and why there's a buildup of pressure between the cab and the camper, and what's going on, or how I know what's happening, is because at one point in time there's a window back here. You can't really see that. There's a window back there. And I opened it and you could feel air actually being forced this way, and it was a pretty quick, fast flow of air when going at highway speeds. So that means somehow there's pressure getting in between the cab and the camper. The other thing you can see in this footage here is these water drops are not just like slowly going down the camper, they're really being forced down by pressure. So my hypothesis, or what I think's going on, and if you have a theory of this, please let me know, because I obviously want to correct the fuel economy issue with this camper. But essentially what I think's going on is you can see there's a bit of curvature to the cab here, and air will normally try to follow the curvature of the cab. I thought it would just cleanly kind of flow over the top there, What I think's happening there is coming off top of the cab and it's hitting right here. It's kind of tilting down because of the curvature on this, and it's creating pressure in between here, and that's what's making the flow run backwards into the cab, and that's what's forcing those raindrops down the back of the camper. So my ideal to correct that is just do a piece of aluminum across here like this that spans the full front of the camper, and that will be in another video. I'll show all of that testing, and then of course, if you have any theories as to what's going on, please let me know. I'm all ears. I do not know everything. I do have a bit of a background in engineering, and we deal a little bit with like Bernoulli principles and stuff like that, but I am by no means an aerodynamicist. So all your thoughts are much appreciated. Also pertaining to campers, which you're probably into if you're watching this video, is like I said, this one's just a prototype. We're gonna build another camper like this, but I'm also gonna do some aerodynamic testing with a much bigger cab over camper. So you're looking at some footage of that right now. That frame was built like 2 years ago, but essentially what I'm going to do with that frame is I'm going to skin it with a bunch of plywood and then do aerodynamic testing with that cab over camper. So that'll have a big section on top of the truck, and that camper is substantially bigger, substantially easier to live in, a big old camper like that. But really what I'm worried about is that big cab over camper affecting the fuel economy of the truck more than this little thing does. So we'll see. I'll go one of two ways, the big cab over camper, or I'll do the one that looks a lot like this, but with a pop top and toolbox on either side. Let me know which one you would choose. Oh, and like your third grade teacher always told you to do, don't just tell me which one you would pick, tell me why you would pick that specific one, because that's important. So one more thing, it's not something that didn't really work, but I have a weight sheet on this truck. I got it weighed right before the trip started, and it's 5,500 pounds, fully loaded with everything. That's full-on overland weight. To be honest with you, I expected that to be lighter. That's a bit concerning because I'd like to build more elaborate campers or bigger campers, which we've already talked about in this video. And you're not really supposed to exceed 5,500 pounds on these trucks. So 5,500 pounds for this truck, that is gross vehicle weight rating. So legally, that's as heavy as you're supposed to be. I understand, I fully understand people push these trucks to 6,500 or 7,000 pounds. Fully loaded, they can take it, they can handle it, I got it. I really care about weight because as you add weight to a vehicle, it just makes it handle like freaking crap. This truck handles really good for a big truck on big tires. No lift, I got the front end super light, so it's got really nice sharp turning response. That's one big reason for not having the winch on the front. That's why it's actually behind the driver's seat. We're just trying to keep the front end light, make it handle good. But you know, speaking from a bigger picture, we want to keep the truck as light as possible because that's going to make the truck last longer, less wear and tear, better fuel economy. Less weight is just a win-win-win-win-win situation, in my opinion. I would much rather bring very little gear with me and have my truck ride really good and perform really good, personally. So I was about to put this video out and then I realized I forgot a very important feature of this camper right here. So you can see right here, there's open square tube right here, there's open square tube right here, and then open square tube right here. So what those are for, kind of basic, it's just for camper legs to go in, but with a twist. So the truck has an onboard air compressor and then has airbags that are actually controllable from the inside of the truck. So the ideal is that you go and you use those airbags to jack the rear of the truck up like this, and then you install very simple camper legs. So the camper legs don't need an actual like crank mechanism to change the lengths of the legs, which is a very simple sliding legs. So you jack the rear of the truck up, slide those camper legs in, and then you can use the airbags to drop the truck back down. It literally just drives out from underneath the camper. So what that enables is the truck to offload the camper anywhere. So scenarios where that's applicable is like maybe you go out to Sand Hollow, somewhere at the sand dunes, you want to take this very capable lightweight truck out. You pretty much leave your camper with all your AC and your fridge and your huge electrical system with all the amenities somewhere, and you go out and you rip in the sand dunes, and then you come back and you pick the camper up again. Like, imagine that. I think that is one of the coolest things in the world because that's the best of both worlds. So we talk about how the weight of the camper ends up affecting the vehicle a lot, but if you can just shed the weight of the camper and then take the vehicle out very quickly and very easily, I feel like that's the best of both worlds. Another situation where that's applicable is like, say you get to a little small town that you really like and you're like, oh, we want to stay here for a while. Offload the camper in a safe location and you can drive the truck around town and explore with a lightweight, fun to drive truck. I've already started building these legs. This will be its own separate video at some point, and we'll probably put these legs on this camper because this is a prototype. We'll test this and make sure it works, but that'll be a separate video at some point too. It's actually getting kind of dark out here. It's time for the lights. Oh, time for the lights. Lights, there we go. I gotta fix that. Anyways, so yeah, those are the things that weren't so great about the camper, but ultimately I would argue this camper was an absolute huge success. It, you know, completely was total life support for literally 2.5 weeks on the road, which is awesome, man. I got to see a ton of things, got to see a bunch of friends I haven't seen in a while, got to see a bunch of family I haven't seen in a while, and a bunch of great places on top of that. You really don't spend a ton of time in the camper. I just crawl in there, go to sleep, and then wake up and, you know, go to the next cool destination. So yeah, really enjoyed this camper. Let me know what you think of it. If you want to see a camper build in the future, this camper build will be on the channel. Also, future camper builds and aerodynamic testing for the campers we talked about in this video will be coming to the channel. I know I got to build, this truck actually had a huge hole rusted in its frame about 2 months before the trip, which I had to fix. That video is coming soon. And I also when I found the hole in the frame of this truck, I was in the middle of creating a really cool high clearance front end that actually has a sway bar on the front of it. So you can see the nice high clearance front end on this Tacoma, and then behind that, it's actually hard to get a sway bar in it because the sway bar would kind of go where that high clearance front end goes. So I actually had to modify the sway bar, and it's a whole big thing. Anyways, it's a really cool front end on the truck in my opinion. It's super light, and it means the truck handles really good. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, please subscribe, and thanks for watching. So bonus round here, this is something that's absolutely clutch in the interior of the truck here. So I have a solar panel on the hood of the truck, so we don't have to worry about running the battery down. But even if you don't have a hood mounted solar panel, it's super nice to have a little power thing like this that's connected directly to the battery. So even if the truck's off, I can charge things like the camera I'm recording on now. This was super handy, charging RC cars, all that good stuff.